Chapter 88, Monday, 4th of November. Glenn Branson felt a little nervous taking this Monday morning briefing without Roy Grace present. True, Roy had been absent for both the ones yesterday, but at least he had been near Brighton and easily contactable. Now the newlyweds would be getting ready to leave for the airport for their honeymoon, and there was no way he could or would want to disturb them. He spent much of yesterday closeted with a senior Surrey homicide Detective Inspector Paul Williamson, reviewing where Operation Aardvark was to date. It was normal to have regular reviews by an outsider to help the SIO ensure nothing had been overlooked. Although Williamson agreed that the forensic evidence pointed to Matt Wainwright, he remarked that there was nothing in the man's history to indicate that he would behave in this way. Wainwright's reputation with the fire brigade was exemplary, and he was in a stable, happy family relationship. Yes, he had a motive, but they both felt it was a weak one. They reviewed the recording of Wainwright's first interview, and Glenn had to agree the man's protestation of his innocence were convincing. Although Wainwright had not been eliminated from the investigation and was out on police bail, the focus remained on finding Bryce Lauren. Okay, right, he said, staring at the seal faces of his team gathered around the table in the conference room. Any overnight developments? Hayden Kelly, dressed in a black pinstripe suit, white shirt and brushed silk black tie, raised his arm. Glenn, the forensic podiatrist said, I'd like everyone to look at this whiteboard. He pointed to a new one which had been erected alongside the boards displaying the crime scene photographs of Dr. Carl Murphy's body at the golf course and the association charts. On the left-hand side of the board there was a close-up of a single boot print in wet grass and another photograph of a row of them in the same wet grass. To the right of these, a profile photograph of fighter's boot and a zoom image of the sole of the boot. There was two computer prints out graphs between them marked A and B. Using a laser pointer, Kelly put the red dot first on the close-up of the print taken at the golf course. Firstly, let's view the single footprint in the grass. After a few seconds, pause to allow the audience to digest the observation. He then moved the dot into the image of the firefighter's boot. This is a photograph of one of the matching pair of boots found in the fire officer Matt Wainwright's car. He swung the dot over to the zoom image of the sole. This is the sole of that boot. This is an exact match of the boot print in the grass taken at the golf course. He moved the beam to the next photograph of the row of prints, and these are an exact match also. There is no doubt that these prints found at the crime scene were made by this pair of boots. He paused. Which puts Matt Wainwright at the crime scene, right? Dear Spatula said. Kelly gave him the kind of benign smile a teacher might give to a pupil who'd had a good but unsuccessful guess at an answer. Let's have a look at these two graphs. He swung the red laser dot onto the one marked A, then he ran the dot over it, tracing the zigzag pattern. I fed CCTV image of Matt Wainwright in the cassette block into my forensic gait analysis software, and his graph shows his gait pattern. Looks a bit pissed if you ask me, all that zigzagging. Norman Potting said. There are a few titters of laughter, and he looked around with a grin. I don't think so, Kelly said, humouring him politely. Now this is where it gets interesting. He moved the dot across the graph mark B and again traced the zigzag line. Quite different, yes? He gave them a quizzical look. Several people nodded. There's a reason, Kelly said. As those of you who've been on other recent reinvestigation with Detective Superintendent Grace know from my previous work, we are able to identify the gait of someone from their footprints. He pointed the laser dot back on a graph A. This is the gait of a person who's left those footprints at the crime scene at Haywood's Heath Golf Club. He was wearing Matt Wainwright's group boot for sure. He paused for emphasis, but it wasn't Wainwright who made the prints. So who did? Dave Green asked. Well, the forensic podiatrist said, I'm sorry to rain on your parade, but my guess is it was your killer, which means Wainwright isn't our man. Quite possibly, Kelly said, nodding. It didn't come as a total shock to Glenn after yesterday's review and the result of some of their inquiries. A doctor had been murdered and his body set on fire. A restaurant had been burned to the ground. A supermarket had been torched. A car had been set on fire. A house had been burnt down. A yacht that was a potential floating time bomb was in the naval custody. The banner headline of this morning's Argus read, Success Arsonist Suspect Arrested. He was now faced with the realization that Red Westwood was still in deadly danger. He asked, How certain are you, Hayden? There must be some margin for error, right? Before Kelly could answer, an internal phone rang. DC Alexander who was nearest it, picked it up. Yes, he said. Oh, yes, sir, he's right here. He turned to Branson and passed the receiver over. Boss, it's Chief Superintendent Kemp. Branson frowned. Nev Kemp was the divisional commander of Brighton and Hove. He would be unlikely to be calling him personally as it was an important matter. Mouthing apology to the team, he took the receiver. D.I. Branson, he said deferently. Good morning, sir. There was almost total silence in the conference room while he listened to Kemp. Although his current role had been back in uniform, Kemp had at one time been a senior and highly effective major crime team detective superintendent. After some moments of just listening, saying nothing, Glenn felt his insides turning cold. His eyes fell on Norman Potting. He kept looking at the man. He looked away, but then his eyes were drawn back to him. There's no possible chance, sir, he asked Kemp. I'm afraid not, so. I'm afraid not, no, Kemp replied tersely, his voice close to cracking. Glenn's own voice was close to cracking too. He was shaking, fighting up tears. He was trying to keep a focus on his job despite what he was hearing. He was thinking who needed to be told, what actions needed to be taken, and what the implications for the case were. The Royal Regent, Red Westwood, had told him just the other day that she was about to exchange contracts on an apartment in this pension block now was on fire, another fire. But at this moment, that took second place to the horrific news that Chief Superintendent Kemp had just given him. He looked back at Norman Potting. Shit, oh God. In the time that he had been in the police force, some of his colleagues had had some close calls, and he'd had one himself last year when he had been shot, but you'd shrugged them off. Fear wasn't something that came to you after you'd done whatever you had to do at the time, whether you were trying to disarm a maniac, wielding a scimitar, or plunging headlong into a vicious fight where you were outnumbered, or chasing a suspect across a perilous rooftop. You just got on with it, running on adrenaline, doing your job. It was only much later in the small hours of the morning that you woke up and thought, shit, I could have been killed today. Rough and tumble danger was part of what you signed up to do when you joined the police. And in truth, many officers signed up for the excitement, but you never really seriously expect that you might one day actually get killed. Glenn could not take his eyes off Norman Potting. Glenn's eyes were watering. Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you for informing me, he said to Kemp. I'll be there right away. He was conscious that his voice was choked. He hung up, blinked away tears. Oh shit, he stared at Norman Potting again. Chapter 89, Monday, 4th of November. Despite all his work distractions, Roy Grace had determined that their honeymoon should be perfect and memorable, and he had planned every detail meticulously. He had begun by ordering well in advance the best car that Brighton's streamline taxis had in their fleet to take them at Gatwick Airport, and now in the back of the Mercedes on the M23 motorway, heading towards Gatwick, his hand entwined with Cleo. Roy felt truly relaxed and happy, confident that Glenn Branson could handle Operation Aardvark competently in his absence, as he felt on one of the few occasions in his life, almost without a care in the world. They were going to have a good time, a damn good time. He leaned over and kissed Cleo on the cheek. God, I love you, he whispered. I love you too, she whispered back and grinned. She puckered lips and said, rather a lot, actually. There was an added bonus, which was that he wouldn't be around for Assistant Chief Constable Cashew Pugh's first week. What a shame. The driver had the news on low. Suddenly he turned his head for an instant. Nasty flying Brighton, he said. Grace felt a prick of anxiety, but determined to let nothing spoil the moment. He only commented non-committingly right. With all the old buildings in the city, many of them fire hazards, and its population of vagrants and drunks and elderly folk who fell asleep smoking in bed, fires were all too commonplace, nothing to fret about. He turned his thoughts back to the journey ahead. For a special treat, he booked business class seats on the British Airways flight. They got a great deal on a suit at the Caprini, the most romantic hotel in Venice. His agent at Travel Consultants had told him they had dinner reservations for tonight at the hotel and for the next 3 nights at different great restaurants in the city that he'd researched carefully on the internet. And before dinner tomorrow night, they would have Bellinis at the famed Harry's bar. So you still haven't told me where we are going, Claire said. Roy Green, have a guess. Some Scunthorpe. Bugger, you got it. 4 nights in the Premier Inn then. You know what, I'll be happy anyway as long as I was with you and back at you. The morning rush hour had ended and the traffic was light, and there was a clear blue sky above them to add to Grace's sunny mood. He saw the Gatwick airport turn off ahead and the taxi indicator moved over. Scunthorpe has an airport, does it? Cleo asked in a testing voice. Humberside. So, Detective Superintendent, if we are going on honeymoon in England, why were you so insistent I check that I have my passport with me? You don't miss much, do you? She stroked his thigh. She stroked his thigh suggestively. All that bodily contact we've had, I guess some of your detection skills must have rubbed off on me. She kissed him again. This can be a bit fussy about us. They can be a bit fussy about us Southerners up in the north. Why Don't I believe you? He shrugged, giving her an innocent expression, stifling a scream. Want to know where I really think we are going? She said. In fact, where I know we are going, tell me. She kissed him once again, ran her tongue round his ear, then whispered distractedly, to bed, soon. 20 minutes later, Grace stood in his socks and placed his shoes in the security tray along with a mobile phone, laptop, and watch and belt. Then he followed Clea through the metal detector to the roof. Neither of them pinged it. As he put his shoes back on, his light was growing. By hanging on to both of their tickets, he managed to conceal from her that they were flying in luxury. She would find out in a few minutes, of course, when he took her into the lounge for the first glass of champagne of the day. He could not wait to see her face. Then his phone rang. Chapter 90, Monday, 4th of November. Bryce Laura was in a sunny mood too as he drove along Tongden Avenue shortly after 10:30 a.m. Despite his ridiculous itchy beard, his anger that they had played this music in church forgotten, he was humming to Van Morrison's Queen of the Slipstream, which was playing on his van's radio. Turned to radio success, so appropriate as he was on his way to see his queen. And this was a street fit for a queen, the swankiest street in all of Brighton and Hove. He passed a big bling house on his right, set well back from the road behind security gates with a faded columned facade. Then an equally swanky one on his left, sitting atop a circular drive high above the road. He imagined he would have fine views of the sea over the rooftops to his right and a mile to the south. Oh yes, he could imagine living here, a swanky life with Red. Once upon a time, the music ended, and he heard the voice of Danny Pike welcoming back his special guest, Norman Cook, aka Fat Boy Slim, who was talking enthusiastically about his new venture, the Big Beach Cafe. But Bryce had too much on his mind to concentrate on chatter right now. Sorry, Danny and Norm. Catch you later, eh? He turned the radio off and then braked to a halt as a learner driver had executed a painfully slow three-point turn. The instructor waved him through so that he drove on, looking at the numbers on the left. But he didn't need a street number to recognize the house he was coming to view. Tongden Lodge. He recognized it by the 10-foot brick wall running around the perimeter that he had studied much earlier on Google Earth. It was a sodding great wall like a fortress, and there were wrought iron gates closed. He slowed as he passed and pulled into the curb and parked his van a short distance on, thinking he had a number of plans going on inside his head all at the same time, plus plans A, B, C, D. He rehearsed them all carefully in his mind. He had plenty of time. Over an hour and a half before Red would be arriving for her appointment. Ahead he watched another loaner driver under instruction, also making an absurdly slow three-point turn, and further along the road was yet another learner driver doing a similar maneuver. He wondered, this would be pretty irritating if he lived here. He started the engine, turned the van around, and drove up to the gates. Then, tugging his baseball cap peak low, he wound down the window and stared at the smart brass entry phone panel. There was a numerical keyboard pad and with a bell button beside it, and the lens of a CCTV camera. The camera did not worry him. He could not see much of his face. He rang the bell hard and long. There was no answer. After a minute he rang again, still no answer. To be sure, he rang one more time. Good, no one home. He climbed out, clutched a small toolkit, then unscrewed the front plate of the keypad and lifted it off. He studied the wiring beneath for some moments, prodding around with his tiny insulated screwdriver, working out from his knowledge from his job installing such systems. What was that? Then he shorted them out. Moments later, the gates swung obligingly open. He replaced the keypad cover, then drove up the steep, curving tarmac driveway, passing the garage block with what looked like a combination above it to his left. Nice granny annex, he thought. The driveway formed a loop in front of a large red brick mansion. Definitely swanky, he thought. He parked the van nose into a yew hedge on the far side of the drive, and it would look like a workman or gardener's vehicle, then climbed out. Just to be sure the house was empty, he walked up to the porch, which seemed even bigger and taller as he approached it, and rang the bell. His story prepared. He was delivering a package and was at the wrong address if anyone should open the door. But again, there was no surprise. He rapped several times with a brass line knocker. Again, no response. This was so good. He checked his watch, then took a walk around the side of the house. Beautifully trimmed terrace lawns, a swimming pool beneath a blue cover, with a wooden pool house that looked in good condition, a grass tennis court, the net lowered and the markings faded. He checked his watch again to be sure. almost an hour before Red was due here to meet her client, Mr. Andrew Austin. He strode back to the van, opened the rear doors, and peered in, checking all was in order, and he was pleased with his handiwork. The 6 restraining straps bolted securely to the side of the vans and the floor. Then he peered inside the leather hold door to check all the accessories: hood, gag, blowtorch, scalpel, power drill, folding razor, pliers, water bottles, caffeine tablets to stop her falling asleep. She would need to stay awake to fully appreciate all that he had planned for her. I read, we were going to have such fun, bringing back all those memories, you lying there as I read out all those texts you sent me, hundreds of them. He looked at one, still stored on the phone he had long ago stopped using. Oh God, I love you, Bryce. Something is missing today, and it is defo you. I so love you, adore you, fancy you, admire you, want you, learn for you, prime for you, miss you so much. Can't wait, seriously, cannot wait to see you tonight, to be in your arms, to hold you and taste you. XXX. Will you remember this one, Red? I'll make the pain bearable enough, so you will, I promise. You're going to be remembering so much in the coming hours. So much. Happy days. He closed up the van, then walked back up the side of the house, looking for a suitable hiding place that would give him a clear view of the driveway. He found a laurel bush that was well sided and took up a position behind it. Then he settled down to wait. Chapter 91, Monday, 4th of November. I'm sorry, darling, Roy Gray said for the third or maybe fourth time, turning to Cleo, who was sitting in the back of the marked traffic police BMW state car as PC Omatoso drove them down the fast lane with the M23 lights blazing, siren wailing. I understand, she said with a wan smile. You don't have to apologize. I understand totally. You don't have any options. Not much of a start to your honeymoon, is it, sir? Omatoso said grimly. Gray shook his head miserably. No. At least Cleo did genuinely understand, he thought, and involuntarily he suddenly found himself thinking about how Sandy would have reacted to the same situation. Not at all well, nothing like the calm, understanding way in which Cleo was taking it. She reached down and took his hand, gently massaging it. You didn't really have any choice, darling, she said. He shrugged. I did. I could have ignored the damn phone, and then would have to get to Venice, and there would have been a message waiting for you at the hotel, and would still have to come back. You wouldn't have been able to stay there. I know you too well. So it's better it happened before we bought the plane. We still have a honeymoon. It's just delayed, that's all. He squeezed her hand and stared into her eyes. She was incredible. He'd never ever in his life loved someone more than he loved this woman. And the way she was handling her disappointment made him love her even more, and made him even more determined that yes, they would have their honeymoon soon, and when they did, he would make it all up to her. But for the moment, his thought was a million miles from the airport lounge and the glass of champagne and their suit at the Caprini with a bottle of champagne he had ordered to be waiting on ice for their arrival. His thoughts were on the fire at the Royal Regent building, where Redwood had been buying a flat, and where, although it was not yet confirmed, it would appear that one of his best officers had died this morning, and then he was responsible. He squeezed Leo's hand hard, again for comfort. Tears were rolling down his cheeks. 20 minutes later, the siren still wailing, PC Tony Omatoso weaved the BMW through the standstill traffic along Marine Parade. Grace could smell the vile stench of the fire, increasing strong as they neared the building. Ahead he could see a blaze of blue flashing lights, and as they approached the scene, he saw 3 fire appliances, 2 ambulances, the dark green mortuary van with the coroner's emblem on the side, police cars blocking most of the wide street, and 2 television outside broadcast vehicles, as well as a radio success outside broadcast car. Fire hoses were hurling jets of water through the windows on the ground floor and the first floor of the blackened building. Thick dark smoke was belching out. Charred debris lay on the pavement. A large number of onlookers, several of them holding up their phone cameras, were crowded around, kept at a safe distance by a cordon of blue and white tape and several police officers. Do you mind dropping Cleo home? Grace asked Tony Omatoso as they pulled up close as they could get. Of course not, sir, he said. Grace kissed Cleo, then climbed out into the choking stench of noxious smoke and damp. Almost instantly, and to his horror, he saw the new Assistant Chief Constable, Cassian Pugh, in his full dress uniform and braided cap, striding towards him, followed by the Chief Constable, Tom Vandersons, also in full uniform. Roy, Pugh said with a cadaverous smile, his eyes as ever cold as glass, his arms outstretched. They shook hands. Pugh was, as Grace remembered it from before, damp and limp, and Pew winks, visibly under Roy's strong grip. It's good to see you again. But what terrible circumstances. Grace nodded, blinking away tears, and his voice choked. He could barely gather the words. Yes. Then with difficulty he added, Sir. Terrible news, the Chief Constable said, also shaking Roy's hand. It is, sir. Let's not be formal, Roy, Puce said, giving Tom Morrison a silent glance. We've had our issues in the past, but let's look forward now, shall we? Good idea, Grace replied wearily. He wondered what bombshell was coming next. But instead, Puce said, this is one hell of a start to my first day here, and to my honeymoon. Pew nodded. It's good of you to come. This must be bloody hard, not as hard as losing an officer, sir. But we are absolutely sure we have. Pew pointed at the building, then shot a glance at his watch. I'm told that Detective Sergeant Bella Moy entered the building to try to save a child around 8 this morning. She hasn't come back out, although she saved the child. It is now 5 to 11. The fire chief had told me no one could survive in there for just 1 minute without breathing apparatus. She's smart, Roy, Grace said. Maybe she's found an air pocket. He knew he was clutching at straws. Has anyone searched the place? Pew pointed building. 5 officers have searched as much as they can with breathing apparatus and with the remote cameras. The stairs have all gone. They've been up on the ladders, and their opinion is there was a sudden commotion behind them. Both men turned. A man shouted, let me through. I'm a police officer. Let me fucking through, you half-wits. That's my fiancé, and then let me through. It was Norman Potting, his face sheet white, holding up his warrant card, shaking off the hands of a uniformed police officer as he ducked under the tape and began running towards the smoking front door. Norman! Grace shouted, alarmed, then sprinted after him. 2 firefighters got there first, restraining the detective sergeant by his arms. She's in there, Potting shouted. Oh my God, Bella is in there. Let me go find her. Let me find her. I have to get her out. Grace reached them. Potting looked like a crazed animal, his eyes bulging, his whole pallid face pulsing. Norman, let them do the job. If she's in there, they'll find her. I'll find her. She's in there. I'll find her. I know she's all right. She's my Bella. I love her. She's all right. She's safe. I know she's Bella, he shouted at the top of his... I know she is Bella, he shouted at the top of his voice. I'm here. It's Norman. I'm coming to get you out. Then he collapsed in tears in Roy's arms. Oh God, Roy, please don't let anything have happened to her. I love this woman. She's made me realize I've never truly loved anyone before in my life. His voice was choked with sobs. Please don't let her be taken away from me. We've only just found each other. Please don't. Please, please let me go in and rescue her. She's okay. I know she is. She has to be. Please let me go in. I won't be a moment. Norman, Grace said gently, listen, let the firemen find her. They have the equipment. If she's okay, they'll find her. That's what they're trained to do. Norman hugged Roy, Grace clinging to him as if he was a life raft in a storm-tossed ocean. I love her, Roy. I do. I truly do. Please don't let anything have happened to her. They said the dog came out. She must be okay. If the fucking dog has survived, she must have done too. Chapter 92. Monday, 4th of November. Ever since the phone call on Sunday from Rob Spofford telling her they had a suspect in custody, Red had been feeling uneasy. It just didn't sound right, but she figured the police must know what they're doing and would not arrest someone unless they had some strong evidence. Surely they were still looking for Bryce, and Rob told her it was not certain that the suspect was involved. In her heart, she remained convinced that it was Bryce who was behind all this. It had to be. She drove the Mission Mackay Mini along Tongden Avenue as fast as she could, conscious that she was nearly 10 minutes late. The couple who'd made an appointment to view the house in Coleman Avenue had turned up 20 minutes late, having gone to the wrong street first to ensure each of the sales team could achieve his or her daily target of 15 viewings for most appointments. The agency allowed a quarter of an hour viewing slot, but she made sure she had nothing booked in after this Tongden Dean house because she figured that someone contemplating spending $3.5 million might just want a little longer than 15 minutes. A moment later, she was forced to help by a learner driver under instruction in a driving school car practicing his three-point turn. There was another just beyond this one doing the same. God, it must drive the residents of this exclusive street bananas that every driving school in the city chose to come here, although she couldn't understand why. It was a wide tree-lined road with very little traffic normally. She looked at the car clock and double-checked the answer was 12 minutes late. The instructor at least had the courtesy to wave her past, but Just as she started the maneuver, the idiot learner suddenly shot forward. How she missed a collision she did not know, and in her anger she raised her hand, giving two fingers. Not a good advert for the company, she knew, with its logo embezzled all over her car. But she didn't care. She knew to get to the house and was already perspiring with anxiety. Police don't give up and leave, she thought. She saw the high brick wall ahead, instantly recognized from the photographs on the glossy brochure on the seat beside her, and the gates open. She had to stop again for another full agonizing minute as another learner stalled in the middle of the road ahead of her. The woman driver started, jerked forward a few inches, then stalled again. Sod you. Red put her two wheels over the pavement and drove around, bumping back into road, then finally reached the house. The smart gold and black sign by the open gate confirmed its name, Tongden Lodge. She turned in and drove up the drive, passing the garage block to her left, and reached the top, where the drive became circular and she could now see the magnificent house to her right, and she breathed out a massive sigh of relief. The client wasn't here yet. She had beat him to it. She glanced down at the list of names on the line paper on her clipboard with today's early reading to remind herself his name, Andrew Austin. The only sign of life was a small white van parked on the far side of the drive, probably the gardener or someone doing maintenance on the property, she assumed. She rummaged the assortment of keys and found the one for Tongden Lodge, which also had the gate entry code and alarm code written in its tag, thoughtful of the gardener or whoever to the left the gates open for her, she thought. As she climbed out of the car, closed the door and walked up to the front door. She waited there for some moments and then had a pick of doubt. Andrew Austin was going to turn up, wasn't he? She glanced at her watch. He was now 15 minutes late. She had his mobile number on her list. Give him another 5 minutes, she'll call him. In the meantime, she thought it would be a good idea to have a walk around the property to familiarise herself with it a little. She turned and looked at the stunning view over the rooftop and the house with the south side of the avenue right across Hove and down to the English Channel, which sparkled beneath the bright sunshine. It was a perfect day for viewing. Everything looked at its best. There weren't going to be many days like this at this time of the year. Oh, please turn out, Miss Austin. There was a brick archway through into the gardens with a mature laurel bush beside her. She stepped through it, entranced by the magnificence of the gardens that lay beyond. And if she had entered a secret world, she stared at the neatly manicured terrace lawns, the swimming pool with a Roman arch at one end, the tennis court further on. To her left was a wide, magnificent terrace with a 12 or even 14-seater wrought iron table in front of French windows. What a glorious spot to eat out on a fine summer's day evening, she thought. Making a mental note, and sure that she mentioned this, she was startled by a sudden soft footfall behind her. An instant shadow fell over her, but before she could react, she felt a strong blow on the side of her head, as if she had been struck by a flying brick. A searing flash of white light inside her sky, as if power had been set off. Her legs were collapsed, her body swaying, her brain spinning her into darkness. From behind, Bryce put his arms around her, gripping her unconscious body, preventing her from falling to the ground. He did not want to hurt her to hurt herself. He wanted to do all the hurting. Chapter 93. Monday, 4th of November. It wasn't until shortly after 3 p.m. that the fire at the Royal Regent had been extinguished for sufficient time for the building to be deemed safe for firemen to re-enter. Two went in while Roy Grace and Norman Potting stayed outside, along with the Chief Constable and Cassian Pugh, watching all that was happening and barely exchanging a word between them. Grace badly needed to get back to the office, but he could not leave Norman Potting in his current state. Instead, he called Glenn Branson, who came over and updated him and Pugh and the Chief Constable on the events of the morning's briefings. Glenn had been instructed to step up the manhunt for Bryce Lawrence with renewed urgency and to ensure that Red Westwood was protected. Both the Chief Constable and Cassian Pugh were being supportive to Grace, neither of his bosses levelling any blame. To his surprise, certainly today, at any rate, given their history, Pugh appeared to hold no grudge, perhaps because his skin was too thick. Suddenly, Tom Marnison put an arm around his shoulder. Roy, he said in a kindly voice, sometimes in every police officer's career, a really terrible thing happens. When it does, this is a moment we wonder why the hell we were doing this job. But if we are able to be mentally strong enough, it's also the moment that we realize that that's why we chose to do the job, because all our training kicks in. Not many people phone the police because they're happy. We're not here to serve happy people. We're here to make a difference. Occasionally, however tragic it may be, we give up our lives to do that. Human lifespans are not predictable. Don't Ever make the mistake of measuring someone by the length of their life? Measure them by the difference they made to the world. Roy Grace looked at him and nodded, blinking through his tears. I'll try to remember that, sir, thank you. 5 minutes later, the two firefighters in their breathing apparatus came back out. They walked like a pair of spacemen, their expressions invisible behind their mask. Over to the fire engine, opened a locker in its side, then returned the building with a quantity of lighting equipment. Norman potted out a low, keeling wail, then collapsed, weeping into the pavement. Roy Grace knelt beside him with an arm around him and wept also. He tried desperately to find some words to comfort the old detective, but he could not, found nothing. They knelt together, two grown men sobbing, oblivious to the all around them. Thanks for listening.